Welcome back to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. I'm Mark. Ryan is at the other end of the mic. How you doing tonight, Ryan?
Hey guys.
Last week we haven't talked in a while. We have like a list of movies that we have not talked about that's easily a mile long at this point. But for sake of time, let's talk about the two big titles that released last week, and that would be the 16th of June. Two distinctly different movies: Elemental from Disney Pixar and The Flash from Warner Brothers in DC. They finished 1-2 at the box office, I think, if I recall correctly. But with the caveat that neither lived up to projections or expectations or hopes in terms of dollars. So that seems to be a recurrent theme with certain companies and types of films right now. So let's talk about them and see if we think they're good movies or not, regardless of box office. And let's start with the fun family film first. There's my alliteration for the day, apparently. Disney Pixar's Elemental. We did not see this at the same time. I think you saw this with an open audience.
Yes. Yeah.
With kids.
Yes. With all those normal people.
All those normal people. I think it was open when I went and saw it too, but I actually don't remember how many kids were in there, if there were. So, this is an original IP. This is not Toy Story 6. This is not Cars 5. This is not any of that. This is a story of elements that live in Element City, and earth, air, fire, and water, all trying to coexist to a point. Last year Disney had Lightyear, which they thought they was going to do great, and it didn't do as good as we've become accustomed to Disney Pixar films doing. This one is a little under again. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of stuff going in. Well, not a lot of stuff. This one didn't really get a lot of buzz coming in, which is also unusual for a Disney Pixar film.
Yeah, no, it's. I would say that it's been under promoted. But maybe they didn't. Maybe ultimately they decided to save money. I don't know.
It could be. I would like to say that the one trailer that was out there was not the movie at all. The meet cute, the rom-com meet cute on the subway. Mm-hmm. Never, nothing close to that in the film whatsoever, which I found weird. So it's almost like that trailer was a proof of concept for some of the graphical stuff, and then they decided to make a movie and then decided not to use that bit. I don't know, but it is about a fire family, immigrants from the fire land to Element City. And so this couple starts a fire shop and have a daughter, Ember, who is our main character here, and she encounters the water guy, Wade, through a weird accident. And this is kind of a rom-com, but barely, in a lot of ways. It's not super rom.
I mean, it's well, no, yeah. I mean, it's really kind of a simplistic sort of thing. There's not a lot of layers really there. Basically nobody likes fire
because they burn things.
Yes, because they have the Yes, so water and land get along, and air fits in there just fine. But yes, so fire is kind of the outsider, and but I mean it's and obviously there's a metaphor going on there, but it's not that difficult to see what they're saying.
No, it's
I don't know.
I find this more more so than a rom-com to be like a family comedy in the not so much a comedy, we'll call it a family drama, I guess. Like because Ember is the child of immigrants, and basically the whole movie is her coming to grips with whether or not she wants to take over the family business.
Yeah,
because she's never really thought of anything else.
because it's just that the expectation has always been.
So yeah, so I mean, like a lot of immigrant families, they come, they start a business, they become moderately successful or more successful, and then their kids have to make a choice. But their kids aren't from the old country; they're from the new country, and so they maybe or they do have a different worldview than their family. So there's a lot of that going on. A lot of people really don't like this. I don't think it's bad.
Well, no, I don't. I don't think it's bad. I don't
I
think
don't
it's
think it's
great.
top shelf.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it doesn't feel very progressive in any way. It doesn't feel like it's pushing the envelope in any way. I think it's has the unfortunate placement of being the film that followed up Spider-Man
Yeah.
across the Spider-Verse, which is a very adventurous um, you know movie. And so when you get a film like this that feels really safe, it doesn't feel quite like a Pixar film.
No, I
Um,
mean, but this isn't necessarily made for the same audience as Across the Spider-Verse, but it's
no,
not necessarily it's not necessarily made for little kids.
no.
Kids, but not little kids.
Yeah, I think for me, what the downfall of this movie is probably the emotional involvement because there's not a lot of that. Um, usually if a Pixar film, they're notable in that 5 minutes in you're into the characters and
Yeah.
whatever it takes, it does whatever it needs to do to get you into those characters. And this one, I don't know that you ever really, it doesn't draw you in the same way.
No, and the only character that is kind of developed in close to the classic Pixar manner, I guess, is Ember.
Yeah.
Wade is he's a placeholder. Uh,
Yeah,
they
I mean,
needed
yeah,
someone opposite.
yeah. They needed the star-crossed lovers aspect.
But even that's
I
not super developed.
No, no, it's not. I think I get what they're doing with the elements and whatnot, but it feels a little too simplistic. I guess I don't know. I mean,
No, it is. It's simple enough that little kids can get it, you know, but it's not so complex that they can't be involved in it.
yeah,
But it's not so
but I don't.
simplistic that you can't watch it as an adult and not, gouge your eyes out.
Sure, sure. I mean, I guess it's funny because it feels like to me like it belongs in sort of the Inside Out universe, um, but it feels like the first draft of something rather than whereas Inside Out I think feels a lot more
Polished.
uh, yeah, substantial. Like there's something really there. Um, and this just kind of feels like not necessarily like a Cars 2. I don't think it's that soulless, but um, it's missing that whatever that thing is that made a Pixar movie different from a Disney film.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't know that there's a lot. Like if you were to do a quiz and say, okay, was this Pixar or Disney, and go over the last couple of years of release, I probably wouldn't get them all correct,
Right.
because it's become almost where they're the same sort of thing. There's no distinct identity for Pixar or for Disney. It's
Right.
all sort of the same stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
and we don't talk about the behind the scenes stuff a lot, but I've mentioned once or twice, maybe with you, maybe with some other people, um, about how I had read Bob Iger's book, Ride of a Lifetime, and
mhm,
there's a whole segment devoted to when they buy Pixar and when they buy Lucasfilm, and when he's buying Pixar, he in the book, which came out in 2019, I believe, he talks about how, the huge part of the selling point for him to convince Apple to sell Pixar
mhm.
was that we don't we need Pixar to be Pixar. We don't want to buy it and undo what makes Pixar great, and
Yeah,
make, and but we need you to come in, and we want your people to help Disney Animation become Disney Animation again, but Pixar needs to stay Pixar.
yeah.
And truth be told, they have not stuck to that idea.
I don't know. I would
It is a
say that.
homogenous animated mass.
Hmm,
And I think that's the problem. I think they bought Pixar, they let it run for a while, and then Disney just corporate creep. Um, executive bleed
hmm.
from one to another. That's really boring movie talk. But when it
Yeah,
affects the output, you kind of have to look at it. And I think that's what happened. Um, Pixar needs to be spun out. It either needs to be bought by someone else, or Pixar just needs to be spun out and be Pixar again, a
yeah,
solo entity. And that's the only way I think Pixar can get back. Right now, they're Disney. Pixar is a label. It's like, Searchlight, now that they've bought 20th Century. You know, that's it's just another word they can put over the title of a movie.
sure, sure.
And I again, this is really boring movie talk, but it's stuff that I think applies. But like I said, in all honesty, I don't think this is a bad film. I think there's a the visuals are very much more Pixar than Disney. But they're not top tier Pixar. I actually found a lot of their lighting effects in this, in terms of embers, fire, and those times when they would like refract it or amplify it through water or glass.
Mhm.
I thought those effects were great. The thing I didn't think, or the thing I didn't like about the effects was, the water people were not nearly as good as the water in this movie. And it's like,
Yeah,
no,
no,
you have to have a comparable level of quality between those two, and this doesn't have it.
yeah. I hadn't really thought about it, but you're right. It's if you have maybe yeah, if you're going to have actual water and then water people and have them not have the same sort of characteristics, that is probably a shortcoming. Um, really have, I mean, obviously there's air, but air is nothing like the physical air. Air, the physical version of air is clouds.
Right.
Uh,
Which can be dispersed, and
yeah,
often are.
yeah, and also, so yeah, I think, yeah, the animation isn't bad by any, any sort of standard, but it's also, again, it's just not all the thought all the way through. Um,
Yeah. I think they were so worried about the fire
it
that.
just doesn't feel, I don't know. Yeah, but then fire should exist, right? I mean, fire, there should be fire as a wildness. It should be there
Right, and it's not. It exists only
it's
as a
yeah,
people.
yeah. So I don't, yeah, I think again it goes back to the sense that they didn't think. all their, or didn't put the same, doesn't feel like the idea was as good as it needed to be.
Yeah, like
Um,
they got it good enough, they thought.
yeah,
And I think that's what has traditionally separated Pixar from Disney. From the time Disney was buying Pixar, when even Iger admitted, Disney Animation was in the crapper.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that's part of the problem. Before we move on to the other big movie last week, The Flash,
Mm.
let me just I want to get your opinion on the short film before this
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Carl's Date takes place in the
Uh,
Up universe.
yeah, I kind of hated it, to be
Oh, thank
honest with
God! I
you.
thought it was just me.
No, I found it. I mean, I get what they're doing. Well, here's part of my problem with it. It's really a Doug short.
Hmm.
It may be, the Doug the dog,
Right.
and it just doesn't feel like there's a reason for it other than it's, we like the Up universe. We want to kind of work at that space again. I don't know that it necessarily feels disrespectful, or I don't, it just feels unnecessary. Like,
That my problem is that it's like they undid that love story that everyone
the best
cites.
part, yeah,
The
the
best
best
part
part,
of Up. I mean, I mean, it's a meme. People, that you can throw up a picture of Carl and Ellie,
yeah,
and my favorite caption is still a better love story than Twilight.
yeah, yeah.
And it's true. Still a better love story than a lot of things.
Well,
Um,
and I think it's a weird thing in that. So essentially, the narrative is a woman wants to go on a date with Carl,
yes.
and so he has to decide, is how is this something I want to do? Um, and and then when he's decided that yes, I think I'll do it, it's him not knowing how to go on a date.
Right.
But you never actually go on the date.
No.
Um, so I
Thank
just,
God they didn't do that. I mean,
well,
it's
yeah,
bad enough.
I just didn't. I guess, I mean, I holds Up. I mean, I think Up is one of the best films ever made. And to get it a kind of a cheap. I don't know. I don't think it was. I just don't think it was necessary, and I think that it kind of it's
Well, I
do
kind
we
of like
are
I like when they grab the little. I mean, when they're just these little isolated one-offs like Bow
yeah,
or the one with the raccoons.
yeah.
Which I was that before Lightyear? No, it wasn't before Lightyear. But I don't know. But but like
That
Bow and
it
that
was
one,
it might
and
have been,
and the
yeah,
Piper, little sandpiper.
yeah.
That's those are what those shorts should be. And I think Carl's Date was just that was it looked like Up, but it didn't need to be there.
It didn't
Uh,
feel like Up though.
no, but it didn't. Yeah, it didn't feel like Up. So yeah,
It definitely looked like it, but it didn't have. And I think that's the danger. Everyone's talking about, well, okay, Disney's going to need to go, and they're going to have to make a lot more sequels, and they're going to have to, go and live in these established universes. And
yeah,
some of those pretty darn good, where you left them.
yep.
And I get that this is a money making thing, and they want to, you know, uh, it's a business.
Yeah.
But I think it's, if you're not and I don't know what the answer is, because yes, obviously Elemental underperformed. If you go, I mean, it did a drive, what, like 30 million,
Yep.
which,
29 and a half, I think is what they finished it at.
yeah,
Just
oh, I
something
mean,
ridiculous.
which is not good at all, really.
No.
But I think we also have to look at what Disney did to themselves during the pandemic, and how they have set up. They essentially set up their theatrical releases to fail, because they were putting them on Disney Plus so quickly
Mm-hmm.
that there wasn't, a motive. There wasn't a reason to really go to there was an excuse to not go to the theater,
Yeah.
essentially. So if you need an excuse, they gave it to you.
Yep.
And I think what they found is that, and this is not just them, but I think this is everybody, is the revenue that they thought that they would get from their streaming platforms didn't turn out to be what they thought it would be.
Yep.
And so they invested all this money. They planned on losing a certain amount of money, but recouping that. And they suddenly realized, by not licensing out some of their product, they're not they're not paying to have it on theirs. They're
Right.
also not getting paid to
Right.
have it on a streaming service. So I think they kind of took a model that was working really well when you just had a couple
Yep.
streaming services, and they broke it into a million pieces, and it just doesn't work like it should.
Yeah. I'm
We
waiting.
we all
I'm waiting for news of like AMC and Cinemark to come out jointly and say we're not going to show any film unless the studio guarantees a 6-month from release date before streaming. Because because it's been like 30 days, 45 days, and they've been changing it per film.
Yeah.
And it's like theaters just need to come out and go, nah, 6 months.
I think that it's going to become a necessary thing because they're just not making money.
Yeah.
They're spending, large amounts of money on a variety of projects, and they're getting very little return for those projects. Because it's even worse than I mean, it's essentially our whole thing is shifted to, it was going this way, and we know that, but the opening weekend was that was it. That was your shot.
Yeah.
And the problem now is your opening weekend. It just people aren't going to a lot of these films for reasons that it's probably a combination of a lot of things, but they're losing money on everything.
Yep. Let's remember that it's not about the movies. It's about the movies. It's because some movies are making money.
Yes.
Hand over fist.
And so the question becomes, why are these movies making money? Why, and why is it at this point in the year we have one film that's gone over $1 billion?
Mario?
It was a Mario, yes, 1.3, which is, we're talking worldwide box office here.
Yeah.
And that's like 500,000 more than Guardians, which is the second film.
Yeah.
Which
is considered in a lot of ways not that profitable.
No.
Profitable.
When your films cost $250 million to make, $250 million to promote.
Yep.
And your theatrical run is less than 6 weeks. There's not a lot of time to recoup anything there.
No.
They've unfortunately we've been conditioned to not go to theaters to a certain extent.
And encouraged in many ways.
Because, well, for a while we couldn't.
Right.
I think, and so the streaming system didn't actually get better.
No.
And wasn't the remedy. I mean, it was a necessity at one point, but it's really messed up the industry. But I think it just accelerated. I think the industry was in trouble, and we had talked about this going into the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, that you got to make some films that are $5 to $10 million films.
Yep.
Because you got to. I mean, the risk of just doing $200 million films. That's all you're doing. you're killing your chances, and it's only gotten more that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, it's scary because you look at certain films and it's like, well, if you made that for 10, you could have got back that you could have recouped, but because you did 50, spent 50 on it, and doesn't necessarily look like a $50 million film,
Right.
you're never going to make any money on it.
Well, and let's, I mean, we've had horror, normally a moneymaker. So we've had Boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have Insidious 3.
Mm-hmm.
How did Boogeyman do?
It did okay.
Made its money.
But I think Boogeyman, yes, but I think Boogeyman was also a little more costly than it needed to be. I think if you kind of broke it down, but it wasn't like a $5 million film. I think it was more like a $20 million film.
Right.
And as much as I'd like to say, yeah, that's, I don't know. When you look at, let's just, A24 is a darling. Everyone loves A24
for the most part.
The majority of A24 films are produced outside of they're more of a distribution arm. They're
right.
They're made by there's a lot of them, they're not the primary financer, or if they are, it's a very cost effective
right
thing. And so when they have a movie that's a huge hit, they're making hundreds, I mean, the Everything Everywhere All at Once made a ton of money, not just because it did really well at the box office, but because it wasn't that expensive to begin with. And so the reward and risk is, it's a different sort of thing. I don't know. But so I think the problem is I think that, can you make Elemental for less than 200 million? Can you do that? Are you capable of doing that? Because if you are, maybe that, it's not that you shouldn't be making all these films. You should be more cost effective with what you're making.
Yep. But hey, look, if you enjoy what you're seeing and hearing on the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast, why not take a second to click subscribe if you're on YouTube, click follow wherever you're listening to us. Follow us on Twitter at VS Movie Podcast. Same over on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, it's Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. That would be awesome for us. We appreciate you listening. And now let's get back to the show. So let's talk cost effectiveness.
I don't know, but yes, okay.
So
going into the Flash.
Let's talk about the other big release, the one that won the box office last week, The Flash.
Sort of.
Well, it did win.
It did win, and it's funny, but because there are people who were like, no, that it did fine, and there were people who were like, no, this is a disaster. And I think the problem is you could debate both sides of this,
and that's why I said it won the box office.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. It made the most money last week.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. So the Flash, and I had realized that before we even get into all the Ezra Miller stuff, I had realized that this was a holdover movie. It was a DCEU leftover.
Yeah.
From the Snyder days. But I had forgotten.
They can't say that exactly.
No, they can't. But I had forgotten that it went from that through that transitional time when Warner got bought, to now James Gunn. And then so technically this is like a 3 regime film.
Yes, they shot at least 3 endings.
Right.
That were all variations on a theme.
Right.
But the implications of those 3 endings were really quite different.
Yes. That's true. But let's the basics of the film. If you're a superhero person, if you're familiar with it, it's Flashpoint. Barry Allen goes back in time, stops his mother from being killed and his father from going to prison for it. And bad things happen.
And screws up everything in the process.
And screws up everything.
because essentially the driving force is what made Barry Allen the Flash, and it was tragedy.
Yep.
So you take the tragedy out of his life. He's not, he being a young person, I guess, doesn't think that through. But
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's discuss. Let's, what makes Batman Batman? Tragedy. What makes Superman
yeah,
Superman? Tragically losing his
yeah,
homeworld, or
yes.
he wouldn't be here to be Superman.
Being an
What?
outsider, I mean,
Yeah. So tragedy is key. I mean, you go to Marvel. What makes Tony Stark Tony Stark? Tragedy. What makes Captain America? War. What, pick one.
patriotism, but it's not, yes, but it's war. It's not peace.
No, it's
It's not
war.
an era of peace. It's a young man who wants to go fight for his country
Right.
because there's a horrible bad,
There's bullies, but yeah.
Yeah.
So and in the Flash, Barry accidentally figures out he can run that fast. After that weird slapstick hospital sequence, which is, it's okay.
I don't, sure. There's a part of me, because this conversation literally happened. One of my coworkers came up to me and said, "Is there does he really save a baby by putting it in the microwave?"
Yes.
Yes. And that's not the question I was expecting. But yeah, that's exactly what he does, and a whole lot more. But I think the fun of that sequence is that we get the idea that Batman makes messes, that then Barry has to come in
and somehow clean up.
And I think that's actually kind of fun.
Well, no, it is, but that sequence went on maybe just a little too long.
Probably, but the idea, I thought, was something that I could be supportive of.
Yeah, well, and then he has, after he figures that out, he talks to Bruce about it. Which, okay, so step one, Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
He talks. Yeah, okay, so he talks to Ben Affleck, to Batfleck, and Bruce explains it. He goes, "Why? Why would you do that?" He goes, I could save your parents." And he goes, "Why?" He goes, "Those scars make me who I am."
Yeah.
So literally, it's the clearest possible setup for what you're about to experience over the next 2 hours. You are told what Barry wants to do, and you are told how it can go wrong.
Yes.
Or how it will go wrong.
Yeah,
that setup is given. It's like, so Barry, this is what's going to happen. Yes, but I'm smarter than you.
Or I'm so emotionally blinded to the situation that I can't see your point.
Yeah. So
filled with so much grief and whatnot that all I've got
is this attempt to fix
thing I've got to do.
So he goes back, saves his mom, but gets stuck in a previous time when he's not the Barry Allen of now. He's like 19.
Yes. So he gets stuck with himself.
He gets stuck with himself. But a younger self, a younger and annoying self. But this is not even the younger, annoying Barry Allen from Justice League. This is a completely different young and annoying Barry Allen. This is like the third Barry Allen that Ezra Miller will have portrayed.
Yes.
Now, that said, I actually didn't have a problem with either of the Barry Allen performances.
No,
they generally worked in terms of who they were and what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Barry Allen wise.
Yeah.
So that didn't bother me. But Barry has to create himself, because if there's no Barry Allen in that time, if there's no Flash in that timeline, then bad things are going to happen.
Yes.
So
because we are taken back in time to really where this version of the DC universe began,
Right.
with Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Literally, we're
yes, Zod is coming, or a version of Zod is coming.
Yeah.
And so they have to save Superman because Superman is the only person that can beat Zod, but they can't find Superman.
Which is, yes, there's this, and this is, to me, that's there's this little dark space that they kind of toy with. And they sort of commit to it, but not in. I guess it's hard to go from that hospital scene to something that has
The Russia scene.
It was just, it's a horrific nature. The transition doesn't quite work.
No, and if you try to break it down, it doesn't. That I have issues with that. But so to track down Superman, they have to find Batman.
Yes,
and they find Batman. Well, they find a Batman.
And I think this is problematic too, in the sense that this is the same problem that, to a great extent, that the Fantastic Beasts ran into. Is the moment you introduce a character that most people are more interested in than the main character, you're in trouble.
Yep.
Because because you get 40% of a Batman movie here.
Yeah.
And 60% of a Flash film. And it really needed to be one or the other, or they needed somehow to figure out a way to not make the audience go, you know what? I really did like, Batman and Batman Returns, and man, I wish they had made a third film. And this isn't quite it.
Nope. But yeah, so this Batman, there. if you're, unless you're living under a rock, it's Michael Keaton.
It's Michael Keaton,
who explains the multiverse.
Yes.
With spaghetti, which I love the fact that he echoes the Marvel multiverse layout with the spaghetti. It literally looks the same, and then he goes, "But that's not how it works." Yeah. And then he goes, "This is how it works," and explains why he's 70, but Barry's Bruce Wayne is 50.
Yeah.
Because that's how time works.
I was going to say, and the logic behind it is as solid as it needs to be.
Yes, it's solid enough. It works in what they're doing. But because it is. So there's that. And I would like to point out, when we get to the end, just remind me to comment on Barry's dad. Because I want to, I don't think anyone's talked about this. I mentioned it in my written review, but I want to say that I want to see what you think. So they go and they find Superman in Russia.
Sort of.
But yeah, turns out it's not Superman.
Yeah.
It's Kryptonian Supergirl. But they don't know it's Supergirl. They just know that where Superman is supposed to be is this emaciated young lady.
Yes.
And Barry Prime, if you will, makes them take her, even though she seems to have no value. He just, he's a hero at this point. Barry Prime is a hero.
She needs to be rescued.
And as long as we're here,
and we should do this. I've screwed up the world enough that
and that was probably in the back of his mind. Even if it wasn't conscious, I'll bet it was. So they get outside, and Supergirl's been locked in a steel ball at the bottom of a steel bunker, at the bottom of a bigger bunker in Siberia. So in the dark, gets out into the sun. Guess what happens? Much like in Superman, the original Superman, after nuclear, whatever the explosion was, he's up in space, touches the sun. Or after, Man of Steel, after the world engine explodes, and he fingers touch the sun.
It's the recharging.
Yes, the recharging, and we get Kara Zor-El. So the cousin.
And to me, I don't mind that at all.
I did not mind that either. We haven't even gotten to the parts that I mind yet.
Yeah. So I
There are
mean,
parts that I mind.
yeah, but I like the idea of that. They went in search of Superman, and they found they kind of did find Superman,
Yeah.
but it wasn't as obvious, and it wasn't
Well, they went to
it
find the
came as
only person
Superman's
that could
always been
defeat Zod.
and discovered that that person didn't seem to exist in this timeline.
Right.
And she wasn't going to be the miracle answer, but that doesn't mean she isn't part of an answer.
Right.
So anyway, I like the psychology, and the Superman's always a mental thing. There's always, that's where Superman's weakness, outside of literally kryptonite, but he's unsure of himself. He's unsure of his place. He's an alien in a world that he doesn't really know if he fits in. And I think that's an element of hers as well. But she's been to an even darker place.
Yes.
Than
She was not raised on a farm in Kansas.
Yeah. So
not even close. So she's actually filled with a lot of rage.
Yes.
Which she has to come to terms with. And again, I have no problem with that. So yes, so now our storyline is the Man of Steel storyline, which is stop Zod from destroying the Earth.
But we don't have Superman.
So but we don't have Superman.
We don't have Superman, and we don't have the Batman we expected. So we're going to have to figure out, we have two versions of the Flash. So can we take two versions of the Flash, an old Batman and a
rookie
Kryptonian? Yeah,
because she's a rookie.
Can we somehow, yes. Can we get a positive ending out of this? Because if we can't, we're not going to be able to figure out how to undo what we've done. We've screwed everything up. We've got to get past this Zod incident somehow.
Yep.
And so that's the challenge. That's what's put before them.
So we can't spoil the ending of that timeline, because that's actually an interesting ending of how Barry has to wind up leaving that timeline.
Yeah.
In what condition Barry leaves that timeline. But then we get the inevitable, we circle back around to how Barry got stuck in that time in the first place. We figure that out, which is blazingly obvious. But it's fine. It's part of, it's basically canon. So
I was going to say that's, if you're going to, you can't, if you're
I can't quibble it. It's canon.
Yeah. Well, because, and that is directly, it's, I mean, they didn't change. That's, Flashpoint was written, and this doesn't really mess in that regard.
Although it does play into the Terminator paradox.
Sure.
So, but again, there are very few time travel movies that don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So eventually Barry's adventures in time end, and he goes back home, which we will just call home, and goes to his dad's parole hearing, and something else happens because he changed something else, but he didn't change the past. He changed his present.
Yes.
But using the spaghetti model, that's not necessarily true. So we get to the third filmed ending, which we won't spoil, even though people probably already know. And the film ends. Now, I said I mentioned his dad, and I'm going to say this. I would like to posit that even though this film has no place moving forward, I would also like to posit that this film does not actually exist as part of the Snyderverse. And because I say that, because of using the spaghetti model of time and timelines, This is not the Man of Steel, Justice League, Snyderverse, because that's not Barry's dad.
Sure.
Any more than that Bruce Wayne is that Bruce Wayne, or that Kryptonian is that Kryptonian. So the argument can be made that this film is actually not a continuation of Justice League, or that Justice League.
Yeah, and yes, but and I think what the thing is I think it was assumed for a long time, and I don't know that this was actually based on anything that was officially said. The
Right.
thought was that this was going to do essentially what everyone thought Ant-Man, the last Ant-Man was filmed, was where it's going to set up and make it's going to make whatever comes next clear.
Right.
Um,
But we know that can't be true, and we knew it coming into this film.
so that yes, or at least we again, DC hasn't come out and said we're totally rebooting, but we kind of know that that's almost inevitable. Of what you're actually, of what's going to happen. The problem being you can't say you're doing that when you still have the Flash and Aquaman on the calendar, because then why do people see it? And I
Exactly.
think it speaks to the problem that we've created to a certain extent, in that, well, if it's not part of the big picture, why would I want to see it?
Right. The problem of the interconnected universe is that once you sever the connections, is it enough to be on its own?
Yeah.
And like so, I said, I call this a cul-de-sac movie, and I compare it because the easiest thing to compare it to is the New Mutants, which I called the redheaded stepchild of Marvel. But after 20th Century was sold.
Yeah. It's just,
it's a thing that exists, that looks like a thing that we know, but not like a thing that we're going to have going forward.
Yeah, I would be shocked if not just, and I would have, I think generally speaking, I don't think this film, that took like 10 years to make.
Right.
I think with each passing year, it became less and less likely to have a sequel or to continue.
Right.
It almost, by the time it finally came out, it was essentially in a worse position than even Black Widow.
Yes.
Because at least we know that, yes, Black Widow, we got that movie too late. Should have come out a few years ago. If it had, the story would have been probably different and arguably better. But instead, we kind of go back in time a little bit to fill in a little gap. But this doesn't even do that. This is this is really an orphan.
Yeah, it really is.
It's just, and how much, and I think there's a part of me that do I invest in this when I know that whatever was planned is not happening, or whatever original ideas are so, they're off course now, that whatever the original concept was, it doesn't matter because that picture is never going to be, painted.
Exactly.
I don't know, it's but I hate there's the fact that you put that sort of pressure on a movie too, though. Shouldn't it? I mean, shouldn't we be at a point where, is the movie good? Is the movie enjoyable? Isn't that enough? Does it have to be part of some massive thing? Can't it just be it? Which is what they're trying to do, and which is what Christopher Nolan did with the Batman films. Those films have absolutely nothing to do with what happens in this film.
Nope.
It's completely separate, in every way possible. And I'm sure they would have loved, if they could have, to have gotten Christian Bale to appear in this film.
Okay,
just
so
because.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because we get all kinds of cameos.
Yeah.
but they're all CGI cameos.
A lot of them are, yes.
Well, my biggest issue is, of course, we get the classic Supergirl, Helen Slater,
Yes.
shows up. We specifically do not get Henry Cavill's Superman. And I say specifically,
Yeah,
because we get two other Supermen. And I really hate that they did one of them on principle for how they did it. It felt cheap.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I think at some point this movie became DC has a fairly rich cinematic and television history. And so at some point it kind of became, Warner Brothers is celebrating their 100th anniversary.
Yep.
And it kind of just became an anniversary project. And they stuck all this stuff in there that if you are not necessarily a complete hardcore Superman fan, but if you've been a fan of Superman for long enough to know about things that were made, that weren't made, projects that, did happen or didn't happen or, almost happened or, you're presented with kind of a celebration of everything that could have been, and that just feels weird. And they give a particular character probably too much time. Not that they're doing a lot, but they get more time than some of the real actual legacy characters, just because it's cool and we can do it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't mind the one. Like I said, I felt that the one was just really cheap and kind of disrespectful.
And maybe should have felt more. I think from what you did, and again, this goes back to you. Why didn't you make a Batman film? I feel like there are things that happen to Batman in this film that should feel differently. But because it doesn't really even matter in its own universe, why does it matter in any universe?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just there's and I don't think there's easy answers to this. But I think that there wasn't, it would be interesting to see because there were numerous scripts that were written for this, and I believe they all hinged on some of the same stuff. But it would be interesting to see every different version of how they tried to go about making it matter.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know either. So that was my issue. And then we get to the end and we get a third Batman.
Yes.
That's the big spoiler that they didn't want us to spoil. That's the ending they changed from previous screenings up to and including April, I believe, at CinemaCon.
They just didn't have that. Yes.
They just they just didn't have an ending.
I believe. Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So yes, that would have been. So we got the third of 3 postscripts.
Yes.
And there is amazingly a credit scene, which brings back a Snyderverse character.
It's kind of also like, what the hell is this?
And again, why? But again, for me it boiled back. So that means all of the legacy Snyderverse characters are there except for Henry Cavill. In this. So,
but because I don't know if that's because in somebody's universe he appeared in Black Adam, so
I don't know, but it felt really, especially once they tacked on the credit scene. I was like, no. So now it's intentional, or they just literally couldn't convince him to come. They had burned that bridge.
Yeah, I think.
That and if that's the case, I don't blame him. But
no.
That is a bridge they didn't need to burn.
No.
With Henry Cavill. So, but let's talk about it. Is the movie enjoyable?
Mostly.
Yeah, there you go. It's mostly enjoyable. I think the end, that third act does kind of fall down because it gets very busy and it
Yeah,
becomes a weird CGI mess.
and again, what's happening should have more of a. I mean, and again, this is a problem with not that it's not just this film. How do you make when you have the ability to continuously go back in time?
Yes.
How do you make any of those timelines feel permanent? And who's to say that it won't get screwed up if other people can time travel too? Or there's a lot of
Yep.
nuance, I guess, that we've, at least as far as cinema goes. I mean, what? I guess Looper didn't really feel like. Looper might do it better than a lot of them. I'm just trying to, where
Yeah.
there actually feels like there's, and 12 Monkeys did, I think, it well enough as well, where it feels like you can't keep going back and changing things. Like there is an absolute limit. It's not an exact, time travel is not an exact science.
No.
So you can, it's almost like this archaic thing. Um, Particularly in 12 Monkeys, I like just the ad hoc nature of it and how they just keep screwing up and how they can't get it right. And so therefore it does become an increasingly dangerous thing to keep going back and trying to fix things because you're just wrecking things. Um, and I think that they wanted to have that sense of things in this, but it didn't. It got so obsessed with wouldn't it be cool if, that it almost becomes like an extended what if episode.
Yeah.
That kind of here's 200 million, go make the DC version of what if. What
Yeah.
if it was this? What if it was this? What if it was this? What if this? And slam that into a movie.
Yeah. And so it's 224 in length, but it's very busy, and I guess there's technically a 4-hour cut that they cut down to this, and he said this is the best version of the Flash, and I almost argue that this is still too long, or that it does need to be longer. I
Yeah.
can't decide which. I know
Well,
I don't want a
I
4-hour movie.
I had to come to terms with the fact that it was never going to be a Batman movie.
Right. No, it's
And so for me to, which is what I wanted. I mean, in 1989,
mm,
Tim Burton's Batman came out on my birthday.
mm,
And so my entire birthday that year was based around
Batman.
going to see Batman. Um, and and the combination of it being Batman and it being Tim Burton and me being in my early teens or whatever, just everything about that was perfect. And I loved Batman Returns, and there was always this sense of what if. What if the story continued? Where could it go? And to be given, part of that.
Yeah, sometimes the worst thing you can do is remind people
Yes.
of
Yeah.
what was good before, because then
Yeah.
you're reminding them to compare,
Well, and
or
you're
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 forcing them to
spending
compare.
yeah, you're spending somebody else's money to a certain
Yeah.
extent, or I don't know how to what the metaphor exactly would be, but so I had to come to terms with the fact that this movie wasn't what I would have wanted it to be. Um, and they probably shouldn't have even teased me with
Right.
I mean, it's a no-win situation for the character Barry Allen and the Flash when we'd all rather, or most of us, the people who care about Michael Keaton coming back want a Michael Keaton film. The people who are indifferent or didn't, that's not my Batman, whatever.
Right.
They didn't have any expectations or care to begin with. So
Yep.
they may not even see the film. I don't know. It's just it's a mess that I don't know how you. Well, I know how you clean it up, but at some point, I guess certain characters are secondary characters,
I guess
and not
Batman should never be a secondary character.
Well, and that's the problem. Should the Flash ever be a lead character? Not in this way.
Not in this way. You're correct. If he's with other heroes, he can't be the lead.
No.
It has to be a true solo movie.
And they undercut that whole thing and gave us a couple of, I don't know, pieces of 2 movies or.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's enjoyable enough. I hate to say that it's one of the better DCEU movies in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But again, DC has shot themselves in the foot over and over and over again with movies that could have been really good and weren't. And so if you say this one is one of the better ones, that's relative. I mean, Batman versus Superman is, I will argue, not as good as this, and people will hate me for that. But I don't even care. I don't think the extended version of Batman v Superman is better than this. I don't. Man of Steel is clearly better than this. Justice League is arguably better than this.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
It is arguably better than this.
Yeah. Well,
Wonder Woman is better than this.
Well, first 3/4 of Wonder Woman are better.
Well, definitely better than the second Wonder Woman. So it's just one of those things, and I hate to count movies like Shazam because they're not really part of it.
They were never accepted.
Yeah,
into it.
They were the Cousin Olivers, so you can't count it. So so this is one of the better DC movies, but I don't. It's a cul-de-sac movie. I mean, literally, it's Barry running around in circles.
Man.
So there you go. That is the 2 big movies from last week: The Flash and Elemental. Both okay, but missing something. Movie that opens this week that we're going to talk about in another episode. Wes Anderson has a new movie, Asteroid City, and we will talk about how we like that one. We're coming up on seeing Mission Impossible, which opens in a month, which will be fun. There's also a Jennifer Lawrence movie opening this week called No Hard Feelings, which I saw, and I don't know if you have, but if you did, we'll talk about that one. But I wrote my review, and you can read that one. So we've got stuff to talk about. It is coming. Should be a good time. We've got a new series on Disney Plus, Secret Invasion. I'll be interested to talk about that one too, because I'm sure there's lots of things we can discuss on that. But that's it for this week. That's The Flash. That's Elemental. Don't forget to like us, follow us on social media at VS Movie Podcast. You know how that works. And until we talk to you again, I am Mark. That is Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
And we will talk to you all later.